Greg Ehrenberg here with Awesemo.com. We're talking about PrizePicks and the Friday night NBA games. Most importantly, if you are new to PrizePicks and heading on over to the site, use the promo code Awesemo and get up to a $100 bonus on your first deposit. And I'll give you some picks here that'll make you some money for Friday night's game. The first player I'm looking at on PrizePicks that is Kevin Porter Jr. for over 4.5 assists. Now, his debut game of the season did not go particularly well, didn't go well for the Houston Rockets as a whole. They got absolutely thrashed by the Minnesota Timberwolves. So a couple things happened in that game. Number one, they lost by a lot of points. But in addition to that, that meant that they lost by so much. Kevin Porter Jr. didn't get to play that many minutes down the stretch of the game. Ultimately, only ended up playing 25 minutes. He should play more in competitive games going forward, but even in the time he was on the court, the ball was in his hands a ton. He had 3 assists, 9 turnovers. That's a big red flag. But the important part here is how much the ball was in his hands, and that even those 9 turnovers, while they look bad, it does mean there's going to be potential for him to make more plays going forward. So I'm going to take Kevin Porter Jr. over 4.5 assists. Should be a better game for him today. The next player I'm looking at is DeMar DeRozan for over 4.5 assists, the same number I liked for the over on Kevin Porter Jr. Now, the Bulls' new-look offense, it's a little hard to know what the makeup and the chemistry is going to look like when you've got a lot of high-usage players in that offense, like DeMar DeRozan, like Zach LaVine, and like Nikola Vucevic. But ultimately, I think we're going to see DeMar DeRozan become the primary facilitator for this team. We saw him play his pseudo-point guard role with the San Antonio Spurs last year when he averaged a career-high 6.9 assists per game. Wouldn't be surprising me if we see something similar. I think the props are a little low on him to open the year at just 4.5. The number wasn't quite there in game 1, but still, I think they're working on their chemistry as they go forward. I think we're going to see DeRozan as the primary facilitator for the Bulls. The final player I'm looking at here is Franz Wagner for over 4 rebounds. Now, it's always a little hard to know what to make of rookies when they're first entering into the NBA, but one thing that always matters when it comes to daily fantasy sports or just overall looking at player props is going to be opportunity. And in the first game that Wagner played with the Orlando Magic, he started. He played 32 minutes, and even though it was a game that Orlando ultimately didn't end up winning, he was on the court in garbage time, and that's something that does spell really well for his production going forward from a counting stance point of view, because whether they're winning or losing, it does seem like Wagner is going to be on the court late in the game. And if you look at the projections we have over at Awesemo.com, we have Wagner projected for over 5 rebounds today, so that's something that bodes pretty well when his rebound prop is set at just 4. So to recap, the 3 players I'm looking at over on PrizePicks Tonight, it is Kevin Porter Jr. over 4.5 assists, DeMar DeRozan over 4.5 assists as well, and then Franz Wagner for over 4 rebounds. And there's a couple of ways that you could play these props over at PrizePicks.com. One is with a flex play, where you only have to hit 2 out of the 3 in your entry to make some money. If you hit 2 out of 3, you get 1.25x your entry fee. If you hit on all 3, though, you get 2.25x. But if you're really confident that all 3 of these plays are going to hit, then use the power play, and that will pay you out 5x your entry fee. And most importantly, if you're making your first deposit over at PrizePicks.com, use the promo code Awesemo and get up to a $100 bonus on your first deposit.